Alrighty, it's 6, so let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. So just some quick announcements for today. So we're doing a workshop next week on pixel art. I would suggest downloading paint.net beforehand, just so that you can actually follow along. Dues, Ethan's not here, it looks like today, or at least right now, so no need to worry about that. If you're interested in that, make sure to talk to him if you haven't already. Game Jam is going to be November 8th to the 10th. Just put that in your calendars if you're interested. And as well as the Semester Jam, just a reminder of that. Doing that this year. Theme is Mix. You have until pretty much right before finals. So. Anywho, so today we actually have a guest speaker. Anson, would you mind coming up to talk? Awesome.
Thank you guys for having me. I teach in graphic design, and I teach animation, 3D animation, 2D animation, motion graphics, that sort of thing. Had a few of you in my class, and I am one of 4 other faculty members that have been working to start the game major here at Iowa State. And I guess that's what you want me to talk about here. So I'll just go ahead and, I don't have anything to present, but I can go ahead and speak to it as best I can, and then you can ask me questions. I don't know how long you wanted me to speak for, but maybe just whatever. So a little bit about the history of getting this program started. Actually, it's been a long time coming, put it that way. In 2015, there was some talk between the College of Design and Computer Science of getting something going, and that just didn't get off the ground. 2019, I started meeting with some administration in the College of Design. We were starting to talk about a minor, and then COVID hit, and that sort of put everything on hold. 21, 22, we started back up again, and brought in some faculty, and then things started to move. 23, we got some grant money from the university to do the legwork that's required to get a new major going. And that involves looking at other programs around the country, making sure we're not duplicating efforts here in the state. We got to know what, University of Iowa is doing, etc., figuring out what's going on. I remember we wrote a proposal. And the proposal is called Form A, if you ever wanted to know what the procedures are like here. I was surprised it was called Form A, and then at the same time not surprised, because it's like one of the most basic things you can do is start a new degree. So we went through that process, and that is a very lengthy process of just getting things before committees, getting it approved. And then this last September, it finally went in front of the Board of Regents. They approved it without discussion, which is usually a good sign. And so now we have to deliver. So in fall of 2025, we are going to be starting our game design program. The game program will have, it's a collaboration between LAS and the College of Design. The home is in the College of Design because it has to have a home. It's not because we necessarily want that, but you could really think of it as a collaboration between LAS and the College of Design. And yet it's more involved than that. It's really, if you think about this in terms of departments, there's a lot of departments that are going to have their classes that are a part of the major. The major is going to have a core set of classes that everybody will participate in. That includes the first year, but it also includes later down in the second, third, and fourth year. And 3 focus areas. First focus area is going to be art and interactive media. And as the title suggests, it's going to be mostly art-based. And it's going to have courses in drawing, animation, asset development, that sort of thing. And then the second one is game computing. That's going to be the programming side of things. And then the third one is narrative and world building and writing. Okay. Each one of these has its own focus areas. Okay. They start in the second year. So the first year, everybody's taking the same basic courses. Okay. And those are sort of general courses that we want everybody to have this skill. That's going to be basic computer programming class, and then a drawing course, and then there's a game design class. It's like an intro, a 101 type thing. It's actually called 201. And then there's going to be some introduction to digital media course as well. Second year, we're going to have a game mechanics course, a professional development course, and this is when you're also going to be choosing what focus area you want to do. So let's say you choose the narrative and world building. Okay, you're going to have courses that you can choose to do from there, and these are courses that already exist. Okay, you also have to take 2 other courses in the other focus areas. So you have to take probably an art class and then one of the computing classes. If students went down those focus areas, they also have to take a few courses in the other areas. And this is so that our game makers and game designers have the vocabulary of the other professions. Okay, so that they learn how to communicate, learn how to talk. When someone starts talking about programming and they're talking about certain things, you're not lost. You kind of have an idea of what's going on. You all kind of know how to sketch. All right? In the third year, this is where it goes a little bit deeper into your focus area. You're going to be focusing more on, if you're in the art and media side, art and media, you're going to be focusing more on that. If you're in programming, you're going to be focused on that. If you're in the world building and narrative side, you'll be focusing on that. In that third year, there is a workshop class. It's like a mini capstone where all the students come back in, you're forming teams, you're building games. Okay? Fourth year, same thing, you're going deeper, but then we have a capstone class. And the students come in and it's a capstone. We're going to, in the third and fourth year, we're hoping to have industry ties also that are coming in and speaking and helping out in the classroom, having industry there. And then of course you have electives that you can just take. The way this degree is formed, there's a huge possibility for minors that sort of orbit. There's a great possibility for audio. There's an electronic media audio minor, because audio is like a huge part of game design. We know that it's not necessarily built into our curriculum just yet, but if you wanted to take a minor, you could. And then there's a bunch of other minors, business minors, and like probably 20 different minors that would line very nicely with this degree. It's possible to double major. We went through and we filled in, we looked to see, is there enough space? There is enough space for and certain majors will align better for this than others. But it is possible to double major if somebody wanted to. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We're still getting things off the ground. We're doing advertising. We're getting the word out. We're building structure. We've got a search going on right now. We're looking for someone who is going to be able to teach asset creation and getting those assets into game engines. That's the position that we're looking to fill right now. Also, it's worth mentioning that this game major is not just about computer and digital. Okay, it's games. So we're gonna be talking about games and creating games from analog to digital. So if people come in and they don't ever want to necessarily, they want it to be about people around a table playing a game. It could be that, and that doesn't necessarily preclude digital. We're seeing more games, tabletop gaming, that is including our handhelds and stuff like that. So it could still involve those kinds of things. We have a lot to learn in developing this major. we'll change things along the way, but we're super excited about what we're going to do, and we're super excited to see the kind of games that the students are going to make. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of the rundown for what's happening. I'll go ahead and just open it up for any questions that you guys have. Yes, sir.
What's a good way to prepare for kind of stuff? Like, is there any classes that we can take right now that can prepare us for like the ones coming? Like, for example, like any programming courses or any like stuff like that.
So, I yes, there probably are, especially the first year courses. The drawing 131 class, the stuff that's in the first year. It's a bit challenging when you're starting a new major, right? Because it's like we're thinking we don't have to deliver third year until third year. But if students are already in their third year and they're like, okay, I want to switch over or whatever, I can't advise too much along that because I'm not quite sure how that's going to look, right? We were initially thinking 30. That we're gonna blow past that probably, but what number that we get in that first year, I don't know, and that's going to dictate a lot of those questions. However, I would advise that if you're already in your third year or something, finish graduating. That's just my advice. You don't have to be a game major to get a job in game design. You don't. Like a lot of game design companies hire, people that are not in a game design program, and that is totally fine. So don't operate under the assumption that you have to have a game design degree to go out and get a game design job. That's just not true. Okay, so I think we would take it on an individual basis and advise, well, where are you at in your degree? Does this make sense for you? Remember, our first cohort's not going to graduate until 29. Because if it starts in fall 2025, right, they're not going to be graduating until 29. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be possible to graduate earlier than that. I don't know that. Those are questions that have yet to be answered, and it's really early still. But it's a great question, and we're going to get that. We're going to hear that 1,000 more times. So it's a good question.
So say there's like students who are looking to maybe fill out some like of their existing like electives or something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. Will that be possible?
It might be.
Next year?
Yeah, it might be possible. So a lot of our courses in the degree are courses that exist now. And so you can take them now. You don't even have to be part of the game design program. You can take those courses. Could you take the game specific? Because we do have a core set of classes that are game specific. Could you take those? Probably not if you were not in the game design program, because we have to reserve those for the game design students. But if you wanted to take, a sequence that was on some art or writing or along the world building side of things, absolutely. Yeah. Other questions? I want to make sure I get in people that I have my back to. Yes, sir.
Where could we find some more information about it?
So right now, if you go to the College of Design's website, we have a basic thing going on, but that's where you would look. And so as we put more information and we get more information out or ready, it'll go there. So it's on the College of Design's website. It's already listed there. So we already have like a basic thing there.
I can post a link to that later.
We're looking to have a relationship with the Game Development Club, right? That just seems like obvious. We talked about getting you into that game lab down there. You have a software list for us.
Yeah.
Let's just work together.
Next week.
Yeah. You're going to get into there
Yeah,
next
we're
week.
thinking of starting that next week actually.
Great.
So,
Great. So we should just continue this conversation and make sure that we get the software
Yeah.
on those machines that you asked for.
Sure.
So.
I guess since we haven't done a formal announcement, so we.
Here's a question.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you said that you're planning on doing minors and stuff in the future.
Well, I was saying that there are current minors that go well with the game design major. That was what I said.
Oh, I thought you said something about like like as well as a game design major, you also try to have like game design minor.
No, we don't have a minor yet. You may have misheard me, or maybe I misspoke. But what I was saying is that there are current minors that pair well with the game design major. For example, there's a UX UI minor, and there's an illustration minor, right? Like those pair really nicely with the game major. So if you wanted to, take the major and minor in something else. Did you have a comment? Oh yeah, the digital media minor. Yeah.
There are also some classes I checked them. So I was trying to, like, when I was like a couple years ago, I was trying to find like if there's some kind of game design major minor, but there wasn't at the time. But I did find like these classes that say that they're kind of close. Like there's one like called Computer Science 336, 437, and 402.
Yeah.
And they said they're like video game
Yep.
design and programming
Yep.
classes.
Yep. If those are offered, you can take them. I don't. I'd have to double check if they're part of the. I think that they're part of our electives list that you can take, but they're not part of the sequence necessarily. And I think the reason why is because they weren't being taught. They're on the books, but they weren't being taught. But your advisor Jim, he's the one who taught them, so he'd be the one to ask on that.
Oh, and there's one for music technology too.
That's the minor I think goes really well with game design, with the game design major. Yeah. Yeah, I can see the students that do the minor in that. Like when we get to third and fourth year and you're making games, they're gonna want you on that team. Right? Yeah. Yes, sir.
This is off topic. You said you know to read modeling and animation, and I myself am curious about that.
In the animation side of things, yeah. How would you go about it? So the digital media minor is probably the way to go about that, because you can take that, and a lot of those courses could be a part of that minor. There's probably 3 or 4 courses to take that are part of that minor, and I think the minor is 5 courses. So I think 2 would be out of it and 3 would be in. What did you do?
So I took 2 classes, like a beginner and intermediate class on like modeling and coding.
Yeah.
Then I did the character animation class.
Yeah.
with Google.
Yeah.
And
He
then
kicked ass in that class, by the way.
I showed him the final.
It is good. It was awesome.
And then what else? I did the final one. It was called like interactive art, which is basically
Yeah.
just-
With Austin.
Yep.
Yep.
Just make any.
But you could have taken, for example, the 408 class, which is 3D animation, and that would have counted.
Yeah.
I'm just going back to what this gentleman here was saying. Like you can take animation courses heavy that are that's in the digital media major. You might as well. If you're going to take them and it's outside of your degree, you might as well get credit for it. Right? Does that answer your question? Yeah.
I think we have time for like maybe one more question.
Sure.
If anyone has any last minute stuff.
This is kind of a weird space, and
Yeah.
also kind of
Yeah.
a really cool space.
It's nice,
Like
but
this-
it's also like
this is
yeah,
like-
we were also torn when we first got it.
Yeah, but it's kind of like I don't know, kids. There's some kind of gaming thing that you guys. This is really different, so I don't know, something to think about. This is like a Coliseum type setup here. So
Well, thank you.
all right,
for
thank
coming
you.
in, Anson.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week. Yeah. As we kind of like alluded to as well, I don't have any notes on this, but we are looking to start doing a sort of like office hours sort of thing. So in the basement of Student Innovation Center in this building, there's actually a like game design lab that we've been working with. Thank you, Anson, for helping us with getting that. Also for coming in. But there are like I think 6 total like computers. There's like 3 PCs and 3 Macs with like quite a bit of like powerful software on there. So if people are interested in like using that, or just like want someone to come like look at their game, kind of like get some feedback, kind of thing. We are going to start doing that. I think the time we decided was like, what was it, like 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on Tuesdays?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so 5 to 6:30 on Tuesdays in the basement of Student Innovation Center. We'll probably send out more info and announcement. Apologies for not having that up right now. But yeah, so we'll start doing that. If you guys are interested in coming in, feel free. So with that, we'll start on the actual like writing meeting. So Jeff, you want to take over?
Yay.
Jeff knows a ton about this. So.
I know everything. I have infinite knowledge. So yeah, writing. I love it. It's very. I think it applies well to like a lot of mediums. You don't have to just be like a game developer to love it. Like you can obviously just be a writer, but also like, journaling and filming and like, I think it's super like accessible. Like all you need is just like a laptop or whatever to get started, or just like pen and paper. So that's why I love it so much. But first off, some of you may not be like super experienced with writing. You might not have like a ton of ideas in your head, and you might be thinking, well, I don't know what to write. I don't know how to get ideas. I don't know what's a good idea for something to write. And that's where we open up the huge can of worms of inspiration, which there's a lot to say about it, but in general, video games there are a lot of video games that with great writing, as we'll get to later, but
It's the book that half of all sci-fi is based on.
yeah, The Great Gatsby,
No.
and but my recommendation is branch out. Writing exists in like nearly every medium, every art form, books, theater, movies, TV shows. There's a ton of great examples up there of stuff we love with great writing. You could even use your own life. I took like a creative nonfiction class last semester that was super interesting. You can like express your own life creatively, and yeah, pull your inspiration from a ton of different influences, branch out, and good writing should inspire you. So just try to find stuff that is really well done. As for general writing, a lot of you probably will focus on like plot, which is general story structure. That's just what happens, the premise and the events that take place over your story. That's gonna have some basic stuff like where is it happening? Is it all in the same location? It could all just be in the same room. I think like Saw, 90% of that movie takes place in the same room. And then do you change locations a bunch? Is it like spanning the entire world, the entire universe, or just like one little city maybe? When does it happen? That'll be like the timeline, maybe like the events, like the order events. So like you can think of like I don't know, Memento by Christopher Nolan. That's like a movie that's like half in reverse, kind of.
Like Pulp Fiction being like.
Pulp Fiction, yeah, that has like a few different stories strung together, non-linear. Could have like alternate universes. I know the MCU kind of does that sometimes, although it's not really like affecting the structure, but that's something to keep in mind. And then how does it happen is very important. That's going to be like the premise, and then how do you want it to conclude? What drama do you want to inflict? What in the world is going to be changed? What is going to be changed about your characters from beginning to end? And something very important is you might get some great ideas for a plot or whatever, and you start sketching it out. You should tell other people about it, because it might sound silly to some other people as soon as you like say it out loud, and then you realize not necessarily that like the idea is bad, but like, oh, this is like a huge plot hole, I need to fix this. Oh, this doesn't make sense with this character. In general, pitching your writing to other people, having them give a look over like a script or just like a single scene is super important for like, because you have all the knowledge, you're going to be biased all the time, especially like, you're the artist, you're also going to have like your own negative biases. So be sure to like check with other people and see what they think. Characters. We love characters. I love characters. Big part of big part of a lot of stories. Not necessarily has to be in like every story, but I think a lot of people are drawn to characters because you can express a lot of ideas to them. Internal conflict, emotional drama. They're great for that. We went over like character design a little bit a few weeks ago, mostly on like the artistic scale or artistic side of things. As for like the writing side, it's very important to, if you care about them, some characters don't matter. I mean, they're just like little NPCs or whatever, but the main characters and like the antagonists and whatever, you should flesh them out, give them good motivation for what they're doing, like have them, they can be irrational, but make them be irrational in like a human way that's like relatable or like understandable. We all know like the sympathetic villain trope that like, you know, oh, they're doing some bad stuff, but you know, they were wronged in the past. That's like motivation, and that's also like backstory. Yeah?
Or like Dom in Fast and Furious 4 because he's going absolutely crazy because his wife died.
Oh, I didn't know about Fast and Furious.
I was watching that after this.
I didn't know they had that stuff going on. That's crazy.
That's the movie.
Oh, I see. That's awesome. But yeah, personality is also really important. How do they act? What are they like? Are they like jovial? Are they like kind of down and about? Likes and dislikes. So this is like kind of simple, but like what stuff do they like doing? What kind of foods do they like? Just little things like that. They seem very simple, but if you keep thinking about like, oh, how would they react to this? Do they like this? If you keep thinking about those things, it helps you understand what you want your character to be. You want them to be like, oh, they're really sweet, so maybe they like sweet foods, or you know, you can design your character through simple actions like that. But yeah, backstory is really important. That can be just, you know, general history. It could be like trauma or like, you know, what are their relationships with characters in the past. Habits, speech, body language, that's just general, like, oh, it's kind of tied to personality, like how they act in general. Just give them like something defining so that they stand out. You don't want all of your characters to be the same. But yeah, kind of going back to like likes and dislikes, what would your character do in different situations? Like if you did something silly, like if you put your character in the middle of a basketball court, would they start balling or not? It's, you know, that sounds stupid, but if you like actually think about it and think about like, if you don't know how would they react, find out. Like, you should know your character well enough to know like, oh, you know, they're really serious, but they can be, you know, a little playful. So maybe they pick up a basketball and start, you know, dunking like LeBron right away, or maybe huh? Oh, you have a question?
Well, I was wondering, would you like do like some extra research on the type of, like when you're making a character and you have an idea of how they would act in your story? Would you like do research on people in real life that may act a certain way and then like?
Are you talking about like personality types, kind of, or like, yeah? There are writers who like kind of focus on that, like they try to give like a personality type to their character. I don't personally do that, but you could do that. If that helps you figure out like what kind of, how you want them to act, then totally. Research is super important for writing. Generally, like Googling stuff and like, you know, does this make sense? You know, psychologically, is like, if you're doing stuff with like people with like trauma and like sensitive stuff, you know, research is important. So yeah, totally, you can do research. How your characters interact with each other is super important as well, because not every character will act the same around each character, just like how people don't act the same around every single person in their life. Obviously, you don't act the same way around your parents like you do in front of your friend, and you want to reflect that kind of like relationship and maybe even like tension between like certain characters who are, you know, maybe villains or like antagonists. It's important to define that and make sure the player or reader or viewer or whatever can glean that from like your scenes. Speaking of, we have such good images.
The slides are great this week.
Yeah. So a scene is a very specific, you know, snippet of action, dialogue, and events. You can think about like a film example. You have an establishing shot. It's one room, or like they're outside in the setting. Here are the characters. If it's like a play, you'll have certain characters come in at certain points, but it should be self-contained. It's like almost like its own little mini story. You can just like look at that and then kind of get an idea of like the characters and like what's happening in general. Generally, it's good to focus on like one point of view to keep things clear. Over the course of a story, you can definitely alternate like between perspectives. Tons of stories do that, but for a single scene, if it's not like that long, you should probably focus on like one character's state of mind. Maybe you like enter in with that character. Maybe it's the player character, and you just like, you know, they're the ones receiving new info or whatever. But yeah, what purpose does your scene serve is super important to consider, because if you're just writing out in general, it can be kind of easy. I find it kind of easy to get distracted and just like start adding some fluff and stuff that doesn't really matter. So you should think about, not every scene has to like develop the plot necessarily and like be super important or integral to the plot, but it has to do something interesting, something that enriches your story. So it could be literally just giving like some info and exposition for like the next scene. It could be like developing characters through like dialogue and like some new events. It could be world building if you have like establishing, you know, if it's like a fantasy world, you know, you can establish like, here's a race of people, here's what they do, or their day-to-day lives or whatever. But yeah, think about that. That's super important. And make sure to arrange logically. If you write out of order, which you'll often do because not you won't often write like the entire thing in one go. So you gotta keep in mind that like sometimes you write a scene and it has some information that you know about, but the reader or the viewer or the player doesn't know about yet, and it doesn't make sense to like place that there yet. So you have to make sure to keep things in order. Yeah.
The scene also has more impact if a value or an idea switches from positive to negative based on like, oh no, this is in danger, maybe we can help save it, or it just depends really. Just a value has to change.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that. Did you like read that somewhere or just?
I've been reading Story by Robert McKee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So I would definitely recommend that to anyone.
Cool. Yeah. Totally. Like make sure it has like some significant change, like something develops throughout the course of the scene. Finally, dialogue is super important. So this is just like, you know, people saying things to each other, your characters saying stuff. There's a lot to be said about dialogue. You should keep things consistent, like in the same tone and style for whatever scene you're going for, and it should have the same style throughout. But don't, you know, try not to make things sound too samey. Not every line should be like a single sentence. You can give characters like monologues and
The bottom right corner.
yeah. I don't know where you got that from, but
I mean, it's DMC. The game's consistent.
Yeah.
See, it's consistent in its inconsistency.
yeah. That's Dante. But yeah, make sure you have like a certain tone going in, which is like the general feeling you want your reader, viewer, player to have. Is it like more of a comical or like a funny scene, lighthearted? Is it like dramatic, intense? You know, you can alternate between those tones, even in the same scene. I've seen dramatic scenes be very funny. Breaking Bad is a pretty good example. There's a ton of, it's a very dramatic show, very tense, but it has also some of the funniest scenes in a show I've watched. made me laugh out loud. But it's important to keep those keep everything beforehand in mind. Like your characters, is this like a realistic way they would act? Don't like undercut drama. Don't do like the MCU thing of like, well, that just happened. Like after like some, yeah, after like some like dramatic like story like trauma dump like lore dump like, don't like undercut it. That's right. Yeah. Don't do that. I mean, you can do what you want. Writing's subjective, but like generally, you should try to avoid that. But yeah, consider character motivations. Consider like what characters know, because characters are not going to have like the same knowledge. They're going to like, maybe one thinks something. Maybe like one character thinks A happened when another character thinks B happened, and then they're going to have a conflict over that. Show don't tell is really important, which I mean seems a little weird because like dialogue is people telling things to each other, but like what I mean by that is don't have your characters say I'm sad or I'm happy. Like they should have their own personality, they should have their own ways of expressing things, and they should have their own interesting ways of expressing things. Like you can get a lot more out of like a line that's like a bit more vague, a little more mysterious and like dramatic. I mean, like Shakespeare, I guess, as like an old example, a lot of like prose, a lot of like stylistic choices to make like characters have like the way they would express their emotions is super like dramatic, but like it makes the story like way more interesting to read, as well. So yeah.
Kind of like ReZero.
What is it?
Kind of like ReZero.
Oh, is that the anime?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Characters are pretty interesting. They have like their own issues. I love that. Matches how they repeat and what baggage they go through.
I see. Yeah, no, there's tons of great examples of like subtle character moments that are really great to study on. Anyways.
Great. So I'll kind of take over for the game side of it. So how do we relate this to like, video games more so? So like Jed and I came up with like just some like list of games that we thought like, have some like good writing, just kind of like draw reference to. And like there's a lot of common things among all of these that like, might make them have like considered like good writing. Also, this is like subjective, of course.
Yes.
But
The game where you play as the game where you play as a guy who forgot everything.
yeah, so but I don't know, like any of you guys want to like volunteer like a game or two that you think is like has like peak writing and like just one reason why?
I wouldn't say exactly peak, but I mean, looking at Yakuza, you instantly get like this duality of, hey, I can be hanging out with the boys, and all of a sudden I'm meeting up with the boys, and it does a very good job showing and not telling through its dialogue, even though it's also a visual novel at times. But it does a very good job showing and not telling.
Yeah.
Superliminal is kind of a hidden gem a little bit. I like it. Like,
Continue.
Oh well, yeah, that was kind of all I had to say.
Oh.
I mean, I guess
Or trying
This
to
might be weird because the writing is actually terrible, but Postal 2, simply because the writing fits the tone.
It does have a very defined tone. Yes.
Yeah, the tone, it fits how the game is literally, the game itself's tone is, we know this game is shit. So we're just gonna make it the greatest joke of all video games, and somehow it's it's a weirdly good open world.
Yeah. Can you try not to interrupt though, at least continue on.
yeah, I don't know. I like Superliminal's writing because it ties in gameplay themes with story themes. The whole point of Superliminal is that you can modify or influence the world based on perspective, and the whole story is telling you it's okay to fail and try again. You just have to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Before your eyes, just like a huge bait and switch title tonight.
Mhm.
It's an incredibly short story, but that bait and switch hits hard.
Yeah.
It's
Henry Stickman.
Peak.
Well, the whole thing's just a huge story, and your choices affect whether or not Henry lives dies or.
Yeah, interactivity is a big part of like a lot of story people like. We'll do one more.
I gotta say, like the Metal Gear Solid games,
Mhm.
the writing in those is like very good and like serious, but it's times getting Kojima putting some funny things in there. Like I remember like a scene in the third game where Kojima just comes up to you and tries to figure out who you are, and just like, oh, what did you mean by this, hitting Kojima? Or there's just like some just weird obscure reference or thing up there. I'm just like, what did Kojima mean by this?
Yeah.
I would say Valhalla.
Mm-hmm.
Spelled weird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It does. I think it does a great job of emulating like the people who are living like sort of day to day and like the cyberpunk-esque world. Like you're not treated as like some sort of hero chosen one. That, like cyberpunk is.
Yeah.
It's also frequently very funny.
Sure.
Ori and the Will of the Wisps is really good communicating like character and emotion through their limited dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
That's neat.
I kind of have two since they just came out recently.
That's
Metaphor Recantatio and Sonic and Shadow Generation.
I've been playing both of those quite a bit, so yeah, no, a lot of good examples. I don't know if anyone else had one more. But yeah, we can just continue on. So from like the game's perspective, like this is an important question of does your game like need a story? Pac-Man doesn't it's an arcade game. You don't really need like an overarching plot. You can, but like a lot of the times, if you want to keep things simple, it's not entirely necessary. And also would a story distract from it? Like, I don't know. For me, if every time you finish the level in Pac-Man, there was like a cutscene where Pac-Man's just like having a deep conversation with someone. I don't know. That would take me out of it a little bit, but.
There are little micro.
Well, yeah, but like there's not like story there.
Called stalling.
Yeah. But
Called the learning experience.
like, is your game kind of interesting enough or fun enough to be carried by gameplay? Because sometimes you can have a very simple gameplay style, especially if it's story is the main appeal of your game. Because sometimes there'll be kind of a unique gimmick. You mentioned Before Your Eyes. That game's the entire gimmick is not blinking in order to see kind of what's happening in the story. And every time you blink, it fast forwards. So do you have a story you really need to tell through a video game? Is also something to consider, because if it's you want to keep it to the medium of video games, that's fine. But sometimes it might also just not need to be a game. It could be a book or a movie or something like that. So
I have there are quite a few examples of stories that only really work as a video game.
mm-hmm.
A good example of that would be Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the game, the story, is that you're impacting the future of the wasteland by doing choices, which wouldn't make sense in any, yes, you could make one playthrough of New Vegas into a film or a show.
But it's not the whole experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So just kind of general ways to tell stories, or which Jeff talked about a lot of this, but I'll just kind of rehash it a little bit of cutscenes. Is it Last of Us, where it's kind of intermittently between gameplay, there's a section that's more focused on the story and it kind of plays out and you don't really engage with it. Sometimes it's text-based. A lot of RPGs, it'll pretty much just be you talk to people and there'll be text box, just kind of they tell you stuff. Or a narrator, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. That's not really a story-based game, but the actual story of that game is kind of told to you by a guy talking in the background, the creator. There's also visual storytelling. A lot of Souls games kind of do this, where it's they don't really directly tell you the story outright. They'll kind of just either intermittently through lore excerpts and an item description, or just things that are happening in the area that aren't explicitly being told to you. Oh yeah, I don't know. Elden Ring, the scarlet rot spreading through all of Caelid. It's that's part of the story, but it's never just flat out being hey, this happened kind of thing. There's also another concept with game writing specifically called ludonarrative, which is kind of this idea of gameplay mechanics kind of like connecting to the story or not connecting. So an example would be like, I put it up there, of Uncharted, where it's like Nathan Drake's basically just like Indiana Jones. He's kind of just like this like normal guy who just explores for like treasure, as far as I'm aware, at least. But like he shoots a lot of people in those games, which like
I was about to say, if Lara Croft keeps shooting people in the face and keeps saying I'm sorry, why are you continuing that?
yeah, it's like it doesn't make sense for them to really do.
Also,
this
The Last of Us
experience.
Part 2. That game is about Mario Revenge. That game is like, is all about like unnecessary violence and shit, but the gameplay is all about
Killing
strangling. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about strangling random people for no reason.
Yeah, so like that's something to consider when you're like
Yeah.
kind of incorporating mechanics or like story into your game. Is like, is it gonna like make sense for you to be doing what you're doing? So if you're like a honorable knight and you're just sort of like going around being able to kill people, I don't know.
Yeah, like that.
I wouldn't say that's makes the most sense. Yeah.
I guess like sometimes you can just have a kind of Super Mario type of story. Because there are times like Mario had like a deep story if you look into it, but
Yeah.
its value, it just seems like you just do one thing and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know,
Yes.
it's pretty
Like Mario Galaxy, cause like it's like a game like that where it's like the story's kind of like not like the forefront, but it's still there.
Yeah.
So that's another good way to like. Yep.
An example of a game that has low narrative journey, Hotline Miami 1 and 2. Those games are about deconstructing violence in video games, and it's portrayed like the story itself. Like the story itself is about this ultra-nationalistic terrorist organization that communicates to veterans through them signing up for a newsletter and they're getting phone calls, yada yada yada. But the game is about the violence caused by that, where at the end of each level is you going through a place, solving the puzzle by killing everyone, and then going back through with like complete silence. You just have to reflect on what you've just done.
Yeah, no, that's a good example as well. So, another thing is like exposition is like very common in a lot of types of games where pretty much most of this, it's the easiest way to like kind of give information to your player of like just pretty much have someone tell it to them. And like it can be conveyed in like a lot of different ways. It's not limited to just like, you know, like character, like someone just like standing there and telling you it, or like voiceover narration with like a cool cutscene. Like you can do it in a lot of different ways, but generally a lot of players don't like a ton of exposition, especially in like RPGs. Those are pretty like common places for like a lot of exposition, which like, you know, some people might not mind that, but like if you want to get to the gameplay, that can be kind of rough. Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 4 is 71 minutes.
You're basically watching a movie at that point, which, yeah.
There's no gameplay way to say, hey, they got married. What are you gonna do? Sneak around the wedding shooting people?
Yeah, like you have to explain the story in some way,
As
but
I said, PS4 is 9 hours of cutscenes, 7 hours of gameplay.
Yeah. which for some games that's like.
You lose about 3/4 of the game.
But yeah, for some games that kind of like is fine. People might expect that as part of the experience, but like most players generally aren't like
Longest cutscene.
wanting to like.
Cutscene of all video games is that one.
Not everyone's wanting to just, you know, watch a cutscene for the bulk of the game. You have something, Jimmy?
Just say about exposition. If you're gonna do exposition, do it like early on.
Yeah.
So people know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have played this indie game called The Messenger,
Mm-hmm.
but basically it's literally right before the final level. They do like an unskippable 15-minute cutscene explaining the world.
That game was rough.
It started good, but then like at the
It-
end it soured.
Yeah. I've heard, wasn't there also like you had to like backtrack a ton too, just to like.
Yeah, it went from like a point A to point B game, and
Yeah.
halfway through it turned into like a Metroid game.
Yeah.
It's really obnoxious.
Yeah, so like try to have like, you know, don't load all of your story. At least like try to like spread it out, and like, you know, if you spread it out, you can kind of keep it a little bit shorter too. You don't need to overwhelm your player with a 70-minute cutscene, for example. You don't want like some. Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, I put up Fallout 3 there because it literally starts with you being born, and then it goes through like what
19 years.
19 years of your life
It flashes
until you
like
get out of
one
the bunker.
Like, I'd say like probably about an hour in game time of
Wait.
stuff happening, and then it just flashes forward to 10, then it flashes forward again and again.
Yeah.
That's like the most annoying opening sequence in the entirety of video games.
Yeah. So it's very overly long. You don't get to the actual game for a while. Compare that to like something like Disco Elysium, you literally just wake up. You're in the same state as the main character. Like you don't know what's happening. You don't even know your name, and
Wake up.
you just immediately start playing.
Yeah,
You
because
wake up.
Yeah.
You wake up hungover. You don't remember anything. That is
Yeah.
the start of Disco Elysium.
Yeah.
yeah, and like sometimes like a lack of exposition can like kind of be like an intentionally like interesting choice. Not telling like a lot of like horror games don't really tell you anything from the get go, and that's like part of the appeal there.
Yeah, and then even the worst example of that is FNAF, where they don't tell you shit about the story.
We can talk more at the end.
We can talk
so.
more.
So another thing also, I kind of brushed on it a little bit before, of like visual storytelling. A lot of the time you can like kind of explain your narrative or like things that are happening within your like game's locations and environments. You don't need to explicitly tell someone, hey, like in Hollow Knight, the infection's spreading kind of thing. You don't need to like explicitly tell them that. You can go back to the starting area and realize, oh, everything looks different. Why is that? Kind of thing. So like you can kind of use your art direction to help tell the story in a way as well. Especially like mention Souls games again, but like most of the areas you go through are like ruined and like there's a lot of dead people around. You can kind of assume that like something bad happened there. And you can also like reflect things that are happening with your characters as well. Just even like basic thing of like, oh, your character has like a scar on their face. Where did they get the scar from? Maybe it's told in the story, kind of thing. And then cutscenes as well. They can be good just to give a break from gameplay if it's like really like mechanically intensive stuff like that, or just like hard. Like sometimes someone just wants a like minute of like repose. Can like also reward someone of like, hey, you get to see your character do something really cool after like just a long like really hard battle kind of thing. And it can also just like it's important to show like from different angles as well, because it kind of helps keep things engaging as well. And cons as well, because there's like pros and cons to using a lot of cutscenes. It can really take you out of the immersion sometimes too if there's like frequent cutscenes that like interrupt gameplay. And it can be a little bit clunky from like a game design perspective. Not like inherently bad, but like it can kind of like just interrupt something, which might feel a little weird. Like some games have like like mid boss fight cutscenes that like can be cool if done right, but like sometimes it's just like just let me fight the thing. Especially if it's like you're fighting over and over again. It's like I have to watch the cutscene every single time.
If you were to like, let's say you finish the game, you don't know that, but then you have to do this one version.
Yeah. It can get a little grating if you're replaying something like really long, has a lot of cutscenes, and you just want to get to the gameplay more so. As well, and then there's one other thing, well, two other things I guess, but like lore, not like you don't want to base your entire story off of lore, because like it can kind of work, but it's not like the greatest way to express what's happening to the player. It can be great for like games that are really exploration focused, because you kind of like can learn things about the world you're exploring in like a more natural way. You can kind of learn like you can express things that like aren't.
I'm sure whatever Wyatt had to say was very intriguing and important, but the video recording got cut off. OBS must have crashed for some reason. So I'm going to pick up where he left off. Interactivity in video game stories. So it's always good to loop your different narratives back to the main narrative, for a cohesive plot. And it's always efficient to reuse as much as possible. An example of this is like, I suppose in like Baldur's Gate, Oblivion, Fallout, there can be a lot of branching paths, and it'll feel like all of your decisions impact what's going on, but really there's only like a couple set
events, a couple key moments that happen, that your choices do matter, but it all loops back to like the same couple plot relevant points. It creates the illusion of branching paths and impactful decisions without having to program a extremely in-depth story. And just as a recap, use exposition to inform the player. Use visual storytelling to cut down on exposition, so show don't tell essentially. That can be a much more effective way to get a point across. You know, like the character shouldn't always be like, "I think this" or "I am sad." Let them show it, and keep your branching storylines simple. Story creep, or if your story's too complex, it can be hard to follow or it can be unrealistic to implement within a game world. But with all that being said, here's some reminders. Workshop next Wednesday, 6 to 7. It's going to be pixel art, so download paint.net if you somehow see this video before the meeting. And pay your dues, pretty please. Money is cool, and you get a t-shirt out of it. And then a game jam is coming up November 8th and to November 10th. Elling's room 308, so that's kind of like the basement room of Elling's. And don't forget it. Oh, and the semester jam is still going on. Theme is mix. So, without further ado, go forth, make games, and be awesome.